Hello, and welcome to the Friday show. Thank you for pressing play, for downloading, for subscribing, for favoriting, for writing a review, for anything that you're doing to help support this show, because I can't do it without you. Thank you to everybody who came to the Thursday night hangout. I'm actually recording this before it happened, so I can get it up on time, but I'm sure we had a great time, and there were all kinds of surprises. I have two awesome guests joining me on today's show. Coming up, Professor Eric Segall joins me to rant and rave. He is in a mood, as I said, and I'm very excited to share my conversation with him, with you. He unloads on Elena Kagan, Justice Elena Kagan, for giving a polite and thoughtful introduction to Justice John Roberts this week at some kind of hoity-toity legal establishment gig. We unload on Justice Gorsuch as well, and Eric Segall shares his anxieties about turning 65 on June 1st. That conversation begins at 41 minutes in. But first, for the first time ever, the founder of Mollywood Media, which works to find, share, and invest in climate solutions. She's a longtime business and tech journalist, and she has an awesome new podcast. It's called Everybody in the Pool. I highly recommend it. There are 3 episodes out. I listened to all 3 episodes, and you'll hear me really kissing her ass in this conversation because I think she does a great job, and I think this is an excellent addition to the media landscape that is focused on climate issues, climate solutions. Everybody in the Pool, a climate solutions podcast by Mollywood, is available wherever you get your podcast. I was really excited to talk to her for the first time. Check her at mollywood.co, and I think you're really going to like our new friend, Molly Wood. There she is, Molly Wood. Wow, what a pleasure, what an honor to meet a woman who has accomplished so much. I'm very happy to have you on my show.
I am thrilled to be here. You're making me blush.
Well, you've done a lot. You've been, I don't know, how many careers would you say you've had? I mean, because mainly journalism and now like venture capitalism and media in general, consulting. And I have no idea how old you are, but it seems like you've lived like a few careers.
It has kind of happened that way. Yeah, it's funny because the bulk of it was journalism, but I was lucky enough, even in journalism, to fall into digital media super early, to be doing, web video and podcasting as far back as 2005, because I'm, thank you, pretty old. So it was a journalism career that encompassed a bunch of careers. And then in the last, I would say 3 to 4 years, I think I've had 3 full pivots.
Really? In that short amount of time?
I think so. I mean, it was around 2017, 2018 that, because I was a tech and business reporter for basically my entire journalism career. And then 2016-ish just was like, I have to figure out a way into the climate story. I have to figure out how to make this my story. And so I really pivoted a lot of my reporting to climate. Then I pivoted to venture capital. And now I'm a founder. I'm an entrepreneur. Now I have a company.
Yeah.
I'm tired.
I want
Come to think of it.
I want to talk about it all, but now I almost want to just talk about more personal, work-life balance and how you do it all. And if there were any major failures. I like all those podcasts that are always entrepreneurs that failed or succeeded and why. But it's always interesting to know, what worked and what didn't. It sounds to me like you went into journalism to cover climate, and then you just kept pivoting within that field of trying to, I guess the word everybody uses now is leverage the issue and find ways to solve it, really, or to work on solving it, I guess. Is that?
Yeah. So clearly, as you have pointed out, listening to, and I know this about myself, I'm curious. I'm a little bit of a butterfly, even in the jobs that I've had. I'm a little bit of an entrepreneur. It is the climate thing, I think, that has led to so many more pivots. And that's not a surprise, right? It's a mission. It's a really big and still profoundly undercovered story. And I hesitate to even call it a story because it is, in fact, the life that we are living and are going to live, every day. That I think then led to a whole series of real pivots. Like I went into venture capital because I wanted to try to have a more direct impact. I thought, okay, well, I've been storytelling my whole life and it's great, but we don't have time to change minds. I got to get boots on the ground and give people some money to start really doing these solutions. And then ironically, as soon as I did that, I realized, oh, wow, we really need a lot of climate storytelling and we need storytelling about how it's the biggest business story. in the world and about how,
I mean, not to interrupt you, I'm sorry, but you're combining both your career and skills in media and investing to create a podcast, which I think is pretty original, that tells us and instructs us how to think about investing and consuming as it relates to climate. I mean, I've listened to all 3 of your episodes and I've learned a whole bunch just as like a homeowner or a car owner or an investor. And I think it's exactly, perfect for someone like you. And I really think it's also, I got to say, I'll keep plugging it, perfect for everybody to listen to because everybody is affected by the issue. It's not just some kind of niche podcast. Everybody can learn from this. How did I do?
I mean, can you be my agent? That's incredible. Thank you.
Well, there's not a lot of people. There's not a lot of people who are, understand how media works, how to do a good interview, how to edit that interview as well. And then also the issue itself. And so much of it really is now, as you said, I think investing to some extent, because there was the issue that scientists discovered. Some of us were all in, like me at the beginning. I'm, by the way, a sucker. I bought everything. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. And then there is the government slowly responding to it. And now, this is what I'm going to say, I'm just making this up as I go along. There's the market. The market response is really interesting because now more than ever, and it's increasing seemingly every day, there's money to be made. And we're not going to argue whether capitalism is the way out or the problem right now, maybe another time, but certainly there's a lot of capital. Is that, how am I doing there? Is that what you're doing?
100%. Yeah. 100%. And frankly, I think it's not even an argument. It's both. Capitalism is a problem. And it's the solution. It's like I keep saying over and over, it's the greatest incentive system that humans have ever created. And I'm a business reporter. And this is fundamentally a business story. It's an investment. It's a financial story. And it is a consumption story. It's a story about what we adopt as people. And like, I make no bones about it. It is about what we adopt as wealthy people in wealthy countries. Like if you are in the top 10% of earners in the United States of America and you're not adopting climate solutions, you're like pretty much a climate criminal right now. I'm sorry, it's rude, but this is, it's a time for hard truths. That's what creates markets, drives down cost curves so that you don't have to convince everybody to care. You just have to create a world in which the only stuff that's on the shelf is better.
Right. Don't you think government has to incentivize and regulate around that so that the products are better, so that they are worth it? I mean, I can still buy something cheaper that's going to pollute in many cases, in many scenarios than, I just saw did you see this tabletop composter?
Yes. I mean, I'm kind of obsessed with those.
I am too, but I mean, I don't think it's the most efficient thing in the world. In the end, it's way better to have, a bin out back. Obviously, If you live in an urban area, you can't do that. But I mean, I just think that government needs to do a lot of incentive building in terms of tax credits, much less regulations, and control or consuming probably more. I don't know. What do you think about how government has done or where its place is?
Yeah, I could not agree with you more. And it's, I want every solution. I want everybody in every town to be advocating for curbside compost pickup with transparency about where that compost goes. And if you can be composting, great, right? Turns out chickens, like owning chickens massively reduces kitchen scraps, AKA landfill. So so to me, yes, to all of that, layer on all of the solutions, adopt whatever you can. Great. And yes.
Molly,
we 100% need that investment from government.
What I'm hearing is that, mostly as a comedian, is that you think government should be giving every family a dozen chickens.
100%. No doubt. You have perfectly interpreted my policy recommendations. I've written this up as a white paper for the Biden administration. Chickens for all.
I can't wait. I'm very excited. Roosters, I don't know if you know this, total assholes. I just will say that about roosters.
I know.
I don't know if you've ever met a rooster, but there are no good ones. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So you go deep in the podcast. Tell me a little bit about what you're trying to do with the new show. You've been podcasting for a long time. You've been very successful. It's clear when someone presses play, this is a person who really knows what they're doing in terms of word economy, in terms of sound, in terms of even the people that they choose to interview, as well as the subject matter. I'm all in. I'm really enjoying it already. So tell people about what you're trying to do every week.
I really appreciate that you said that this is a show for everybody, because I actually genuinely think it is. It's a business focused show. It's about what I am calling the climate economy. That's the economy that we live in right now. And to your point on regulation, the Biden administration has, in the form of 3 different acts, not just the Investment Reduction Act, right? But the CHIPS Act and the infrastructure bill all represent a New Deal level of money and investment and subsidy around climate tech. It is actually phenomenal, the amount of investment that's occurring right now, making this a game changer in terms of the next economy. We have the opportunity to transition our economy and give people tons of jobs, right? And it's everyday life. It's innovators. So what I'm trying to do with this show is talk to innovators, talk to people who want to pivot their careers into climate, and then talk to people who are making climate already a part of their career. So in the case of the last episode, I talked to a real estate agent and an interior designer, because it turns out that buying a home now includes a bunch of climate considerations. Yep. Selling a home,
you can make more money. She was so good at talking. She's a real estate agent, so I'm sure she's got great communication skills. But I was like, this is a person, I don't know if they do podcasts a lot, but she really was great at explaining. You guys seem to have a familiarity with each other, but I really enjoyed her.
She is, and she's my real estate agent, and she happens to be right? It's this kind of, this is the best thing about being an independent podcaster, is that I'm I called my real estate agent and my friend who's an interior designer, because they're both incredible, and they're in the Bay Area, and they're, early adopters of making this, they can differentiate their careers by having this layer on top of it. And it's just super interesting. It's all so interesting.
Where do you get caught up? I feel like you're a California person, right? Fully California. Yeah. Are you fully Californian person? I didn't get the full.
I grew up in Montana and North Dakota, actually, almost in equal measure, 50-50. Oh. And my family's all still there.
Why would
so I'm Northern California now, but I have baseline.
Why would anybody that's ever been in Montana leave to go to North Dakota is my question. Do I have North Dakota wrong? It seems not as good as Montana.
I will tell you that at this exact moment, North Dakota is creeping ahead in the sanity department.
Oh, yeah. I'm paying
Montana.
They just they banned TikTok.
Montana's a great state that doesn't have a lot of jobs, turns out.
Right. Okay, so getting back to the podcast and the subject matter, everybody in the pool, a climate solutions podcast. You mentioned, working climate into no matter what you are doing. That's a scary word for some people. I feel like sustainability sounds like cha-ching. It's equal to dollar signs. How do we talk about the issue to convince that everybody that it's not that controversial? Whether you care about pollution and climate and the environment and nature, or you just are a huge capitalist, everybody could win here if we stop being scared of some of the language around it. I feel like that's where we're at in 2023, having talked about it for 15 years.
Mm-hmm. It really is. And unfortunately, it's gotten, I think it is no coincidence that it has gotten caught up in the culture wars, because we all know where fossil fuel political lobbying money goes, right? So I think there's no coincidence that the rhetoric, the kind of anti-climate rhetoric, has gotten a lot more intense and coordinated, because we're at a moment where the money is moving away from fossil fuels. It just is. Absent Russia's invasion of Ukraine, we were at peak oil. This is a declining asset class, full stop. And I though, the market research, the accidental market research we just did about sustainability being a more money sounding word than climate. I think the way we talk about it is in just purely practical terms, right? There is no politics. Fundamentally, there are no politics here, and there's no downside. Somebody sent me a cartoon the other day, and it was, I'm at a climate conference, and on the slides, it's clean water, clean air, jobs for people, clean rivers, healthy ecosystem, happy animals. And there's someone in the audience who's what if it's all a big hoax and we just create a way better world for nothing? Right? No downside.
Yeah, well, the downside, of course, is if we do nothing, or the downside, I've always said to people, what if we're wrong? It will be a disaster. So, we'd love to be wrong. We would love to be wrong about this issue and the science around it. If we're wrong
and we have quiet cars on the streets and airplanes that go overhead that are hydrogen and they only emit water, and animals don't go extinct and there's no plastic in the ocean, but we're wrong about the actual impacts of climate change.
Yeah, but I mean, like,
right? What? I'd rather be wrong with a wonderful world of like new clean technologies than wrong by not doing anything and then we cook.
I hate that we have to even discuss that though right now. That was the argument from 15 years ago. Now it's not, there's no longer what if. You live in California. You've already covered this in the first 3 episodes of your podcast. It's happening. We're watching it happen. You can't get insurance on your home in certain places because it might burn down. That's as a result of human activity. I guess you could argue that you don't think it is, but regardless, it is happening in so many different ways across this country, and obviously even worse for underdeveloped countries who are not responsible for the problem that we are. So if you care about morality and justice, but like at this point, it's happening. You live in California. You talk about this, right? There's no denial.
And it's not just California. It's really, I mean, we're seeing the extent to which we have not covered the unbelievable destruction of flooding and storms in the middle of the country and the, southeast of the United States, not to mention there's a mega typhoon right now out in the ocean. I mean, it's like, it's here. I will say it is looking all too likely that we are about to go through a collective year or two of weather that I think could be a make or break. They're talking about the El Nino that is developing that could be a global weather pattern over the next year or two that will push global temperatures over 1.5 degrees Celsius for the first time. Like, we're about to enter some pretty uncharted territory. I don't know, people have been saying for decades, this, having talked about this for so long, that nobody will do anything until the floodwaters are actually at their feet. I'm not even convinced that will sell everybody.
I think that's true as a result of COVID. Like, we know that because of COVID, everybody compared that to climate. And, what's that movie, the Netflix movie with Leonardo DiCaprio with the asteroid? I mean, like,
Don't Look Up.
Don't Look Up depicted that. Well, let me ask you about. Go ahead.
No, it's totally true.
Yeah.
And that is why I really do agree with you about policy and activism. It's a 3-legged stool. Like, nothing gets done without awareness, activism, and economics.
Yeah.
But I am not one of these people who thinks if you just invent a new technology that everybody will use it because we invented a magical new vaccine and 40% of Americans refuse to take it.
Yes, but I guess that's where you can differentiate, because if you invent a new fuel or car or even investment that is going to save or make me money, I will use it. I'm not, I guess. I mean, some very few people, these guys that insist on having large fossil fuel burning trucks, they're like not a huge percentage. There's too many of them in America, but like most people are going to buy the car. And by the way, you can make that quote manly pickup, and truck in every way, and add your own sound effects and whatever you want. Let me ask you though about capitalism, about investment, about what you've seen and what you're now covering, because I think about this all the time. And I just read an article about a company that is doing carbon capture that has a huge amount of money invested. And I'm like, I want to put all my money in that company that's going to take the carbon out, that's going to capture the pollution. I really want to do that, except I don't want to lose all of my money. Talk to me about what you're seeing in terms of trends and how capitalists and investors have, from my view, have really caught on because they're making money now.
Right. It's a big investing bubble right now, and it's been very interesting to watch it inflate. And you've seen a lot of sort of long-time venture capitalists who made all their money kind of go like, I'm going to do climate for the rest of my career, which is great. But also you're seeing billion-dollar, multi-billion-dollar funds get raised to invest in this technology. There are, as with all things, like upsides and downsides to that. A lot of people are going to lose a lot of money on things like carbon capture. And then we might have a situation, there was a big bubble in clean tech investing in the kind of late 90s, early 2000s that people call in the Valley the clean tech 1.0 bubble. That was a ton of money that went into primarily solar panels, technology, deployment. It was a lot of venture capital dollars invested. It was led by John Doerr, who's a legendary investor at Kleiner Perkins, and everybody lost all their money. Like, subsidies went away. China came in and made really, really cheap solar panels and undercut the entire US market. And all of a sudden, VCs would not touch anything green for a decade. Now they're back and they're making a lot of the same mistakes all over again because they're investing in things that take a really long time to commercialize or to make any money. And also they're doing things a lot better this time around too. So it's like going to be some interesting times. We may have some PR hurdles to overcome in VC soon if we have some high profile failures, but I think it's going to stick because like we keep saying, this is reality now. This is just the world we live in.
Right, because technology has advanced to a place, and probably with AI, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. I refuse to learn. I'm just so ignorant, but I'm guessing that's going to help develop, like every other technology, clean energy technology, and in a way that maybe we couldn't predict just having done it with our human brains. Anything on that, Molly? Like, are the computers going to save us and then kill us?
I mean... The downside is that the computers do use like a lot of energy as they attempt to learn how to think. And that is a bummer. AI is massively energy intensive. It is not quite as bad as Bitcoin. So yay for that.
Well, one was doing something and one isn't, right? Like,
yes.
So
at least AI is doing something, and it can be used to, when people talk about how AI can do this, it's like it's efficiencies in terms of distributing energy so that you don't get a lot of waste. It's new materials design, right? It's simulating different types of battery chemistries. Like there are sort of a lot of problems that computers will be able to solve, that AI will be able to contribute to. And so, yes to all of that. And also yes to the entrepreneurs who are figuring out how to make data centers way more energy efficient and use less water. And so it's going to have to be like a whole bunch of technologies in parallel, but that's my whole deal. Yes to everything. Yes, everything.
And you're the person to like break this stuff down. Like I said, I'm really enjoying it. I mean, I was already enjoying you on the other work that you're doing in tech, and you're so good on the air. But like your network is also really impressive in the way that you guys communicate on the show. I'm really excited about this new podcast. Everybody in the pool, go subscribe right now. Look at me, just plugging away. I'm just
love this.
Well, I want to do whatever I can to promote and to platform, to 1,000, 10,000, 1 million people, any of these ideas too. I think that we in media need to do that as well. Pick winners and losers. Get me excited about something, Molly. It's been a little bit like it's gloom. This whole subject can be really scary and gloomy. Get me excited about something. I'm sure there's something to be ecstatic about. Or
oh my God, there is so much cool stuff out there. I mean, really, truly, I have the most hopeful job in the world. I talk to these because all of this was an attempt to answer the question, who's working on this? Right? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm like, oh, all I ever hear about is this huge problem. Who's working on this problem? And it turns out a ton of people, and they are brilliant. The entrepreneurs that I talk to, I mean, founders, I know that they can get a bad rap because somebody will have a big blow up, but what an incredible group of people who are like, oh, turns out I can use mushrooms to turn old construction material into new sustainable construction material, or to turn food waste into mushroom flour that doesn't give you diabetes and you can bake anything with it, or nuclear fusion, which is either a pipe dream or the thing that actually genuinely lets us raise our kids in an energy utopia. Like that stuff is real, and people are really working on it across the spectrum. I love all of it.
If we just had another planet to develop it for a little longer on. I think about that utopia.
Like, can you just work on that in a little safe space?
Yeah, I mean, I think about the potential utopia, and it's been depicted in so many, different films and so on that we've seen throughout our lives, where we can have this, and we so can have it. It just the forces working against it still, including the legacy energy companies. Where do you see the future of fossil fuel? How much do you think about that with your? I mean, obviously you've thought about it as a journalist. You've been covering it forever, but like, where are they now?
I mean, unfortunately, they are still very much in supervillain territory. Like, you're really still seeing coordinated disinformation campaigns. You're seeing tons of money go into local elections. Like, I have a 3-part strategy for people who want to do something about climate, and it actually starts with voting. Like, vote, invest, and adopt.
I swear to God, I thought you said boating. I was like, where is she going?
Starts with just run away on a boat. Just run away, give up.
No, voting. Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
Voting, yes. So we're still, like I said, we're still seeing unfortunate amounts of lobbying, disinformation, and, sort of meddling in this nascent economy. However, you are seeing money move in the opposite direction. Long term, people really do understand that this isn't a winning place to put your money. Now, a thing we have to be very honest about, and I really do try to do this. This is a transition. And so we have to talk about what goes into the transition. There are people who are adamantly opposed to carbon capture because they're like, well, that just lets fossil fuel companies keep doing business as usual, and it lets them off the hook because we capture the carbon. Okay, well, would you rather not capture the carbon? I would like to capture the carbon. And the truth is that we're still going to use fossil fuels for a while. And so we should do that in the best possible way. And then we should only use what we've taken out so far and not take out anything more. Like that to me is the key. Be honest about a transition. Plastics, we're still going to need them for a while, and they are made from fossil fuels.
Yeah.
That you cannot force everybody to buy an electric car. They're just not going to be able to. They can't afford it. It's a transitional period. If we leave what's in the ground, use what we have in the cleanest way possible, and get everybody, as many people as we can, to the other side as soon as we can. Like, it's a real strategy, but it has to be intentional and honest.
I love the way you're saying it. A lot of nuance there. I think it's completely fair. If I didn't, I'd try to push back on it, but I think that's, mostly where we're at as well. What about the issue, and are you thinking about, will you be covering anything with the animals? The animals are given by different analysis, different amount of, percentages of how much of a cause us raising and devouring these delicious beasts are. And it's the worst thing I do, I guess. I don't know what the percentage is, but the bottom line is there's been a lot of different investments, ideas, and solutions. I just read an article that says, like, a lot of these fake meat companies are probably not going to survive. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong about that. What do you think about potential for getting rid of some of these, basically biologically grown cows? But I mean, they're natural, but I mean, you know what I'm talking about. They're everywhere, and they're a huge problem. What, if anything, can be done there?
They're a huge problem. And I agree with you that I hope that the kind of replacement meat companies make it. And it is really, really, really hard to change people's patterns, especially around eating. And that's where it's incremental improvements in the system across the board. We could be raising cows way more efficiently than we are, and that could be regulated. We could force that onto these industries, and we could force transparency, and we could force improvements. Does that get us all the way there? No. But if we combine that with less consumption overall, right? Just a sort of a habitual opportunity, more items on the menu, and we start to have alternate proteins and alternatives that are maybe not, like, I think people are just weirded out by Beyond Meat and Impossible. But some people are still going to eat that, right? So you can have this kind of like buffet of options. Also, one of the things I really get nerdy about is aquaculture. Like, it turns out that there's like thousands of basically vegetables, some of which contain a lot of protein, in the ocean that we can cultivate extremely quickly and with very low impact that can start to be part of our like menu.
Are they delicious?
I don't know.
That sounds interesting.
They probably can be. Like, imagine if you were a chef at Chez Panisse and you were like, wait, there are 2,600 vegetables I've never heard of. They're going to make it delicious.
First of all, Molly, not all of us know this hoity-toity restaurant that you like to frequent. Second of all,
sorry, coastal elite moment.
No, farm the ocean. It's awesome. That sounds
the ocean.
But more importantly, like, again, going back to your podcast, like listening to you talk about these things and getting excited about them, both as a consumer and an investor, is where that hope that you mentioned definitely lies. Which is why I love what you're doing here. What about the future of transportation? That's something I talk about pretty regularly here. You mentioned that electric cars are still unaffordable. I bought my first one in 2010. I think it was like $50,000. My wife still resents me for getting it until I got a second one. And now she's annoyed by that too, because we're having battery issues with my second Chevy Volt, which is a nightmare. I've adapted early to solar panels as well, and I lease them. So is that going to make my house harder to sell? You cover that in, I think, episode number 2, at least out in California. Who knows, how that's affected regionally. But getting back to the automobiles, that seems to be a really exciting thing for people to talk to. And we're finally, like I said, I bought mine in 2010. It's 13 years later, and now everybody's getting one if they can afford one, because there's no reason not to.
Right.
What they can't all afford them. That seems to be the problem. Why not?
I have some patience for this because it is the process of all new technologies. It takes a long time for things to become affordable. And there are fairly affordable electric car options now. Like if you're in and not everybody is, and that's fine, right? But like if you're in the $22,000 and up car buying range, you can afford an electric car. You can certainly lease one. I mean, I am not a Tesla fan, but the Model 3 at a $399 a month lease, that's a really pretty amazing deal. And in fact, what I'm starting to see, and that tells me that these have gotten way more affordable, is that all the Ubers in the San Francisco Bay Area now are a Model 3 or a Model Y, much like they all used to be Priuses, because it's just the more economic choice. Yeah. It is way cheaper to charge your car than to buy gas. I think that we should probably have a bigger and better conversation about plug-in hybrids. Right now, they're like the worst of both worlds, and they're expensive, but they are an interesting kind of transition option for people who can't have an electric car be their only car. I grew up in Montana and North Dakota. Like, you can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not going to work.
Yeah. I've had a plug-in hybrid for, like I said, I got a Chevy Volt. That's what that is. But I'm glad to hear.
But it's sexy too. Like, right. It's all the posts I do about cars. It's the coolest. I'm a car nerd. I went to race car school. The coolest thing happening in car culture right now is EVs.
You mean in the car culture that many of us are not in? Those of you who are nerds in car culture are all talking about EVs?
No. I think people who are buying cars right now, the EVs are the interesting choice. I mean, I still get Car and Driver, and they are very reluctant. Like, it's not the interesting thing necessarily on the gearhead side of things.
Right.
But it's creeping in because they're so fast. They're so silent. Like, that's where all the interesting kind of interior innovation is happening. And so even the old, the gearheads, the wrench monkeys of Car and Driver are starting to like reluctantly come around.
Molly, will you on your new show? I know you guys don't talk a lot of politics, but will you on your new show talk about, politics or policy as it comes up? We are still the only country with the only political party that is in denial about the problem, much less wanting to invest in the solution. But that fossil fuel money is going to become less and less. But at this point, and I covered politics my whole career, campaign finance was always an issue. I think it's less of an issue. It takes backseat to ideology now. So even though guns are the most unpopular thing in the world, they still pass because it's an ideology and it wins elections. I think the same is true of climate, unfortunately. I mean, Ron DeSantis just shat upon climate yesterday in his announcement. And it's like, this is really the only political party. You can go to Scandinavia, you can go to Asia, you can go to pretty much anywhere in the world, and that's not an issue. How much will you discuss that, think about it, and talk to people about it on your show?
I have to. It's not, it's the first bullet point on my 3-point plan for individual action is vote. And at this point, when I tell you to vote, I'm by default telling you to vote for a Democrat because, like you said, we have an entire political party who stopped even talking about the merits and literally just said, and it was, I think, 2018, the U.S. climate assessment came out. So by law, as a result of George H.W. Bush, because his Secretary of State's office was telling him, hey, this climate change thing, could be a real economic and national security concern for the United States. Yeah. The George H.W. Bush administration mandated that every 4 years, the United States conduct a national climate assessment and to talk about the economic and the security risks posed by climate change and global warming. That came out in 2018. And President Trump said, nah, I don't believe it. And that was it. There's no longer even they're not even trying to say like, oh, the science is wrong or it could be this or whatever. It's just like, nope.
I always like to
became religion.
When anybody brings up that really important salient point that you just did, I always like to bring up military historian Tom Ricks, who I never will forget watching on Meet the Press around the time of the beginning of the invasion of Iraq in 2002, 2003, where I think it was Tim Russert asked him, when are we going to have the, why are we having these wars? When are we going to get out of the Middle East? And Tom Ricks, a military historian, said it's about energy. The only solution is, that was 2002. We fought a horrific war where hundreds of thousands of innocent people died, where veterans are killing themselves every day over energy if you were to water it down. And that's what Tom Ricks said then. And he's, not some liberal climate hippie. It's geopolitics. It's foreign policy. It's war and peace more than anything. Sorry for getting on my soapbox there, but I always think that's important to mention, that we knew exactly what was going to happen, and it happened. Yeah.
And Exxon knew since the 70s.
Yeah.
I mean, with remarkably, terrifyingly accurate science. And because I want a better world for all of us, I want the Republican Party to find a way to talk about this, because they know. And, over and over, there are studies that say, like, if you just ask people about their grandchildren, if you ask about conservation is a fundamental Republican value. It genuinely used to be like, conserve the land, conserve the air for hunting, for recreation, like all of that. And so I hope that economics and job creation can be the way in.
I do too.
But until it is, like right now, it's an ideology that is just.
Yeah, I don't know how we.
That is mass murder. Like, what do you want me to say? It's the party of death.
I don't. Well, I agree with you. I don't know how we get around that. I mean, I'd love to think that we could use arguments like this is a fundamental of the Republican Party, or what the NRA used to be was about hunting, or any of these issues. But at the bottom line is, now, when we come up with solutions, when we find problems like this new study, I think it's pretty good, that natural gas heated ovens are like a huge primary cause for children who have asthma. So I don't know. I'm not some liberal, we can't be doing that, or we have to have regulations around that if we're going to have natural gas ovens, because it gives kids asthma. And now it becomes a grievance and a culture war issue, as opposed to us having serious conversations about the future of our ovens and the sources of energy. Like, we can't, and everybody could make money off that, like you're saying. Yeah, but totally. Unfortunately, I feel like
I wish I had a solution other than we have to have serious conversations, because engaging in the culture war conversation is not a serious conversation. It is not backed up by facts or science, right? It's sort of like, I reject your framing. I am not interested in making this a culture war conversation, because it's not. I mean,
we live in such a weird world where everybody in the pool, a climate solution podcast by you, who's covered this for so long, which is entertaining and informing, and could make you money.
And I'm a dirty capitalist.
And she's a dirty capitalist, is not going to get the ratings that Steven Crowder on YouTube does, or, because and they're having a completely different conversation. You're over here with solutions and ideas where everybody can win, and yet we're up against these people who minimize and simplify and create fear around everything. And they just get monster viewers. I don't know. Yeah. I wish I knew how to change that. I've been trying to for 15 years, but people like you are definitely doing a great job at it. And so it's a great show and great work. Let's see. Why don't we end on you giving us a little preview of what you're thinking about doing for the show. Also, there's a Substack connected to it that everybody should subscribe to, right? And people should contact Molly if they want, consulting ideas as well. But what's coming up next? Everybody in the pool, this awesome new podcast.
Thank you. I'm super excited. I have a bunch of wonderful startup interviews in the can. I am really, because of my marketplace and economics reporting background, I'm very into these financial tools that let individuals invest in renewable energy projects, or that let people advocate for better 401k options in their businesses. Those are 2 episodes that are coming up. And then you are going to love, actually, this company called Finch is all about helping you find sustainable alternatives to the products you're already buying. They've got a plugin that works on Amazon and Target. They've got a website where you can just be like, what could I do better in terms of diapers? And it's just those are the things that I just want to keep highlighting, stuff you can really actually do that isn't very hard. And if everybody just does a little bit, then a drop becomes a flood.
I'm really excited to meet you. I was excited before I started talking to you, because I was researching you, and I was like, oh man, I thought she was just, a podcaster. I didn't know about your entire career as a journalist. I just knew you were really good at talking out important issues and technology. But then having done the deep dive, I'm a fan, I'm a supporter, I'm a subscriber, and I hope everybody else gets in the pool as well, because these are the kinds of shows that we should be supporting. Thank you so much for joining me, Molly. Good luck, and let's do it again whenever you want.
Great. I'll come back anytime. Thank you, Pete.
What do you think? Too much ass kissing? I thought it was just enough to let you know, legitimately, she's a real cool, smart woman, as well as her podcast. Very, very good. So definitely check that out. Go to mollywood.co to learn more about her work, dialing up efforts to support a climate solutions ecosystem, because, as she says, there's no time for anything else. And go subscribe. Go listen to Everybody in the Pool. I think you're really going to like it. Let me know. A climate solutions podcast. Very, very excited to have her in the fold here on Stand Up. I'll definitely be talking to her again. All right, now it's time for one of our favorites, one of our regulars, the great con law scholar from Georgia State University, the author of Supreme Myths and Originalism as Faith, and the host of the Supreme Myths podcast on Twitter, on TikTok, Espen Segall. Ladies and gentlemen, time to get it started with Eric Segall, the Legal Eagle.
All right, here we go. There he is, the Legal Eagle, Eric Segall, and he's in a mood.
I'm in a mood, Pete.
In a mood.
I'm in a mood.
Hey, what's going on? What are you in a mood about today?
Okay. There is a little bit of this at the very beginning is going to be a look at me Louie moment. But after we pass the look at me Louie moment, it'll get more fun.
Okay.
There's something called the American Law Institute. It's an incredibly prestigious group of lawyers, judges, and academics. I will say that I was admitted to it last year.
Yeah, the ALI.
Yeah, and it's a big honor for me. So
I have no idea. Just said that.
It is the ALI.
Well, congratulations.
It has its annual meeting in D.C. every year. Its meeting this week. I was invited. I couldn't go because we're moving and my head is exploding. But leaving aside the moving and head exploding part of that, yesterday, Elena Kagan introduced John Roberts at this event. That's how big an event it is.
Wow.
Yeah. And I just listened to her remarks.
Okay.
And I listened to Roberts' remarks. And I'm mad! Okay. Kagan, while admitting in
Are those publicly available?
Yes. On the internet, you can go find them.
Okay.
Just Google ALI, Justice Kagan, Justice Roberts. Kagan did a couple times during her talk. Not a talk. It was an introduction. During her introduction, said, the chief and I disagree. I'm paraphrasing this, Pete. The chief and I disagree on issues, and I disagree with him. He disagrees with me. We're not going to hide that, And then she said all the things you'd expect her to say about camaraderie and collegiality and things I generally agree with, and what an amazing person, lawyer, and judge Chief Justice Roberts is.
Huh.
He is none of those things, and she should not have given him this cover at this moment in time. So I want to remind people, and if they want to go look at this, I wrote a piece just last year in the Washington and Lee Law Review called Justice Roberts, Institutionalism or Hubris. And the point of that piece was he's not an incrementalist. That's not what he leads with. Occasionally he acts slowly, but that's not what he leads with. He is not a, kind of a referee, or he called himself an umpire. What he is a man of unconscionable hubris. So before I get to why I'm mad at Kagan, I want to explain one thing about Justice Thomas. And what I'm about to say are facts. These are not opinions.
Justice Thomas?
Roberts. This is not Segall ranting about the court not being a court, or Segall ranting about the law should be this or that. No. 1965, of course, Congress passed the Voting Rights Act, which many of us consider to be one of the 3 or 4 most important laws in American history. The original version of the Voting Rights Act, Pete, treated different states differently, depending on their past use of literacy tests and their past use of violence to stop blacks from voting. Although white people tried to stop blacks from voting in a lot of different places, it was much worse in the South than, say, Maine, or North Dakota or something. So South Carolina brought a lawsuit in 1966 saying, you can't do that, Congress. You're not allowed. You are not allowed to treat different states differently unless you have a really strong reason. The Supreme Court rejected that and rejected it 100%. And what the court said was that doctrine of of not treating different states differently only applies when new states try to come in the union. If we have two new states trying to come into the union and we put different rules on one than the other, that's not fair, and we don't do that.
Okay.
But the court was 100% clear, 100%. Once a state is in the union, Congress has recognized it. They have senators, they have representatives. There is no doctrine where Congress is not allowed to treat different states differently, assuming Congress is acting under a power given to it by the Constitution. Section 2 of the 15th Amendment says you can't deny voting on the basis of race. And Section 2 says Congress can use all appropriate means to enforce this provision. So that's what Congress did in the Voting Rights Act. In the case before Shelby County, in the case, not Shelby County, where the court struck down the Voting Rights Act, but right before that, Justice Roberts, in a case, said that there is this doctrine where Congress can't treat different states differently without a strong reason, a doctrine he made up that doesn't exist. And he took that paragraph from South. Now, the next sentence should have been, and we reverse South Carolina versus Katzenbach. And if he had done that, I'd be complaining to you about what he did about the law, but I wouldn't be complaining to you about the person. I would just say it's a bad legal rule. It's not what he did. He used ellipses. Ellipses are those three dots, he used to show text that's been taken out. He used ellipses, and he took out the part that said this doctrine only applies to states before they join the union. And then he held it applies to states even after they join the union.
That doesn't seem right.
It was a lying, fraudulent fraud, and numerous law professors other than me have pointed it out. Justice Ginsburg pointed it out in dissent in Shelby County herself. He lied through his teeth. It was not opinion. It was not shading this or shading that. He used ellipses to reverse a landmark constitutional vote. It's unbelievable. Now, yesterday, this is where your audience is going to be. I'm be interested in their comments. So yesterday, Justice Kagan is asked to introduce Justice Roberts at this really big event.
Yeah.
Now, on the one hand, it may be the case that we say, all right, they're colleagues. Roberts isn't a criminal. He's not, that we know of. She should be polite and introduce him as befitting the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. And if that's someone's position, I'm like, all right, that's not irrational and terrible. I think it's wrong. I think at this moment in our country's history, when over the last 3 to 4 years, the court has completely destroyed, reversed, and overruled many, many, many cases that Justice Kagan feels strongly about, including, Pete, the case that held the Rucho case, where Roberts ruled for the conservatives that partisan redistricting cannot be looked at by federal courts. That federal courts have no authority to review the most partisan redistricting, like in Wisconsin and Maryland. Republicans in Wisconsin and Democrats in Maryland have redistricted horribly. And Justice Kagan's dissent in that case is almost personal. Like, she was really mad at Justice Roberts in that case. And there have been other cases. This is a man who said the way to stop discrimination based on race is to stop discriminating based on race, which is an incredibly stupid, naive, absurd statement. My point here is she either should have refused to do it and let a conservative do it, which would have been fine, or she should have done it honestly. What she did was miserable. And it creates this idea that what they're doing isn't that important. And it's more important for us to get along than to destroy American democracy, for example.
Right.
So I don't understand. Now, I understand people's reactions will be, no, she's being polite, she's being a friend. No, we're past that, Pete. I mean, we are past that with this Supreme Court. Steve Vladeck, who you've had on your show before, and you should have again in the next couple of weeks, just wrote a book called The Shadow Docket.
Yeah.
And in that book, he explains how horrible the Supreme Court has been for the last 4 years under Justice Roberts's command. Like, the Chief Justice doesn't get to do a lot, but he gets to do some things. And because he assigns opinions when he's in the majority, it's a lot. That power is important. The other conservatives want to get opinions assigned to them. So he has a lot of discretion there. And there's just no reason we should honor this terrible man. He's been a terrible man since 2006. Not because we disagree about things. If we were debating, let's just take a real big issue that I think he's wrong about, but it's a reasonable disagreement. The whole delegation problem, how much can Congress delegate to independent agencies? I think Roberts is wrong on everything he says about that. But if we were in the same room together, he would give his reasons, I would give my reasons, and we would say, all right, we disagree, and that's what makes court cases. We disagree. I don't blame Roberts for that. I blame him for bad faith, intentional bad faith, like he did by reversing a landmark decision through ellipses, or by thinking he knows how to stop discrimination in this country and can impose that on public schools across the land who want to do something different, or 15 other, or for God's sake, NFIB, the first Obamacare case, where he said, Pete, and I quote, the Medicaid part of Obamacare was retroactive and a surprise to the states and therefore unconstitutional. He said that. It's retroactive. He said that. The states had 6 years to plan. And you know this from Dr. Carroll. They had 6 years from the day it was passed to the time the states would have to pay one extra penny. They had 6 years to plan. There is no definition of the word retroactive that applies to the Affordable Care Act. They had a 6-year lead time. That's a lie. Yeah. It's just lying. It's bad faith. And then he coerced Kagan and Breyer to join him by saying he wouldn't uphold the law in total if they didn't join him on Medicaid. And CNN has reported that, and it's true. So this is a terrible man doing terrible things. And Justice Kagan knows it. Just read her last dissents in like 5 or 6 different cases. Big cases. She knows he's a terrible man.
When presenting the medal, Justice Kagan praised the Chief Justice's writing. The Chief is incapable of writing a bad sentence. His writing is depth, intelligence, crystal clarity, grace, humor, and understated style. That writing is, in my humble opinion, the best writing in law. He's a consummate legal craftsman. Well, he's a good writer, is what she said.
He is a good writer, but he's a better liar. He's a good writer. He's a smart lawyer. By all accounts, he was one of the most able oral arguers ever to appear before the Supreme Court, which he did like 20 times. I am not saying he's not really smart. I am not saying he's not a clear writer. I'm saying he's a fucking liar. And the Chief Justice of the United States is a liar. He lied. The case is Northwest Austin versus Holder, I believe. He lied. He schemed. He planned. He lied. And she knows it. How does she know it? She wasn't on the court at the time. Oh, no, she was. Excuse me. Strike that. She was. But Ginsburg wrote the dissent, not Kagan. And Ginsburg points it out. So she knows he lied. He lied in Shelby County. It's like the most important case of the last 20 years. Why is she honoring this man? What is her strategy? Why is she doing this? Does she think she can soften him up? What are the odds of that?
Oh, well, do you think there's some strategy behind it?
No, I don't. I think it is a knee-jerk, I'm a Supreme Court justice, I'm going to honor my colleagues no matter what.
Right.
And I think there's a time and place for that. I don't disagree. I have con law professors all over the country on my podcast who I disagree with vehemently. And we have usually civil disagreements because we're disagreeing about law in good faith.
Right.
He's not acting in good faith, Pete. And I'm one of the few. I mean, I wonder what would happen. I really don't know the answer to this question. I really don't know. I know for a fact that 20 years ago or 15 years ago, if you had asked Dahlia Lithwick or Steve Vladeck or any number of other liberal commentators / law professors, is Justice Roberts acting in bad faith? They would have said no. 15 years ago, they would have said, no, we just disagree. I would love to hear Dahlia's answer to, is Justice Roberts acting in bad faith in those cases I'm talking about? Because he is. He's acting in bad faith.
In his speech at this institute, American Law Institute, when he talked about the hardest decision he ever had to make. Did you hear about this? It wasn't a legal one. It wasn't Voting Rights Act in Shelby County. He said the hardest decision was putting up a fence. The hardest decision I had to make was whether to erect fences and barricades around the Supreme Court.
Okay, Pete, stop there. What he's talking about there is after Dobbs, I think there were people who went to Alito's house and maybe maybe Roberts' house. They shouldn't do that. And a couple other places. And no question, there were security issues. And so what Roberts is talking about there is putting up like a fence around the Supreme Court, I believe, for security reasons. All right. I understand why that bothers him. I understand why that was a hard decision. Do you really think that's a harder decision than allowing North Carolina, Texas, and South Carolina and a bunch of other states to disenfranchise blacks because he lied about a previous Supreme Court case?
I could probably think of, without having to look it up, a few other things that must have been harder decisions.
All of the post-Citizens United cases, of which he wrote almost all of them. They're about, forget Citizens United, I've said before, that case involved censorship and prior restraints of political speech, and the result was correct. But after Citizens United, there are about 5 cases where Justice Roberts literally wanted to end all campaign finance. All.
Jesus.
I mean, he doesn't want any of it. And, you know, that's just, the hubris of that is terrible.
Well, what about this? I think I saw you tweeting about this. Chief Justice John Roberts said there's more the Supreme Court can do to, quote, adhere to the highest standards of ethical conduct. And he was speaking again at this dinner, and he said that he, without any specifics, he said the justices are continuing to look at things we can do to give practical effect to that commitment. He said he is confident there are ways to do that consistent with our status as an independent branch of government and the Constitution's separation of powers. So he gave some lip service.
He gave lip service to this lack of an ethics code thing. But here's what he didn't say. He said, we're going to work on it and we're going to make sure it has practical effect, or whatever. I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but I know what he did not say. He did not say what we are working on is a binding, legally enforceable code of ethics. Every other judge in the United States has a binding, legally enforceable code of ethics. He didn't use that language, Pete. He's doing it again. He's doing what he did in fucking Northwest Austin. He's the case before Shelby County. He's doing it again. He's using his abilities as a lawyer to say words that the press will report as, oh, look, he's actually paying attention to this, when in fact he's not.
Right.
If he had said, I can't tell you if it's 6 months or a year or 2 years, but we will finish this process. As long as I'm Chief Justice, we will get a binding ethics code that this court is legally bound by. If he had said that, I would have been like, hey, yeah, that's good. He didn't say that. He did not say that. So there is no reason to think a legally enforceable binding ethics code is coming anytime sooner to SCOTUS. And without that legally binding ethics code, we get Supreme Court justices like Clarence Thomas in the fucking pocket of Harlan Crow, who, by the way, speaking of Harlan Crow, while I'm ranting here, told the Senate of the United States that he would not come testify in front of them because it would be a violation of separation of powers. Do you understand that Harlan Crow has no governmental authority at all?
I don't know. Yeah, I saw that. I was wondering, I was going to ask you about that. That was a pretty big deal, I think, yesterday. How can
he can't. It's stupid. Stop. It's just stupid. That's the thing, Pete. So when you first met me in 2010, I was talking, I hadn't written the book yet, but I was telling you things about the court. That's not a court. They don't take law seriously. Blah, blah, blah. Scalia is awful. Blah, blah, blah. If you had asked me back then, do you think individual justices are actually acting in bad faith? I would have said Thomas, yes. Alito, I'm not sure. And Roberts, I'm not sure. And frankly, Ginsburg and Marshall, to the extent they voted progressive 99.99999% of the time, I don't know how the Constitution means what anybody thinks it means 99.9% of the time. So I would have been equivocal about it. I'm no longer equivocal. This is a bad faith institution acting in bad faith, doing bad faith things for one reason and one reason only, to help the Republican Party. That's it, full stop. And for Kagan, you have to understand, Pete, Kagan gives him, in the elite of the elite, in the people that matter, not me, in the people that really matter. When Kagan goes there and says all these nice things about him, it matters. It tones down. And it's not accurate, and it's not honest, and it's not truthful. So
Jamel Bowie wrote this great piece on Neil Gorsuch.
He's great, period, by the way. I don't have to say that because he likes my work. He's great, period. I liked him before he liked me.
Talked with Dahlia about it, but I got to ask you the same question because Neil Gorsuch made a comment. He added a statement, which I guess is not normal.
So there's majority opinion, dissenting opinion, concurring opinion, Sometimes there's per curiam opinions, which is when none of them sign on, they just all say it. And he issued a statement. That's a weird thing. Like, I don't even know what that is, to be honest.
So in this statement that he issued, it was regarding, let's see, where is it here?
COVID and civil liberties.
Yeah, COVID and civil liberties. You wrote, good morning, Justice Gorsuch, the justice who once said a man had to freeze to death because of words, and the man who brazenly lied about the praying coach thinks COVID restrictions are the worst abuse of civil liberties in our history. And then you say he should watch 12 Years a Slave, and others have said, read a book, etc. What about this abuse of civil liberties?
Right. Well, I've been thinking a lot about Gorsuch, Pete, because he's a complicated person. I've been thinking a lot about him for a couple of reasons. There's a person on Twitter who I like a lot and follows me a lot. He's either Native American or he supports Native American causes for good reason. And he wants me to spend much more time on Native American causes, which is fair. It's just not my area of the law, and I'd have to really do a lot of work to get up to speed on it. But I have had people on my podcast talk about Native American issues. Anyway, Gorsuch is the best justice when it comes to Native American issues. And everybody agrees on that. Not debatable. He is the most sympathetic to Native American issues. And I don't want to minimize that in any way, shape, or form. That's a really important thing. He also wrote the Bostock opinion, which held that gays and lesbians get statutory protections from being discriminated against based on their sexual orientation. And good for him. That's the right decision. And I think he came about it honestly, and that was all good. On the other hand, I'm trying to see how the right legal phrasing for this. He's just a fucking pig in most other areas. And his mother was really bad. I'm not holding the sins of the mother against the son, but for those who don't know, she tried to destroy the EPA before she had to step down in shame. Neil Gorsuch probably feels the strongest of anybody on the court about destroying the executive branch of the United States government. He doesn't want the EPA, just like his mother. He doesn't want it. He doesn't want any federal interference in anything. He is the leading proponent of the major questions doctrine, which your audience has heard of, which is completely made up and puts a limit on Congress that's not in the Constitution. So he's not all bad, unlike Thomas, who's all bad. He's not all bad. But the idea that COVID restrictions threatened American civil liberties more than slavery, black codes, segregation, redlining, and LGBTQ discrimination. How would you characterize that view, Pete? Insanity? Gross? Disgusting? I mean, even if one reasonably thinks, and one could, that many states, and maybe the Supreme Court, went too far in allowing, Pete, 1 million people died! How can we overreact when 1 million people died? I don't understand! Someone tell me! 1 million people!
Yeah, but you closed my gym.
I mean, 1 million people died.
I know, but I couldn't go to church and get COVID at both those places.
So here's my thing. And I've said this about Marshall and Ginsburg, so this shouldn't come as a surprise to people. I don't know what Gorsuch was like before he became a Supreme Court justice. My guess is he was not the person I'd love to have a beer with the most in the world. But when you take people, you know what I think is a common denominator with Alito, maybe Roberts, probably Thomas, and probably Gorsuch. This is going to sound stupid. Please don't. This is going to sound stupid, but I have personal experience with this with other people who have been the leading law professors and judges in the country. My guess is all of these people were incredibly unpopular for most of their school. and no, I'm serious, Pete. And then what happens is they get to law school. This happened at my law school. They get to law school. I went to Vanderbilt, not Harvard or Yale, but ranked top 15, 18 law schools. There were people at my law school who got really good grades, who were awful people. But because they succeeded and were the top of their class and they were getting all the plum clerkships and all that stuff, they had a little more popularity than they ever had before. And then, and this is the transformation, geeks become dicks. And geeks aren't as bad as, maybe I'm a geek. I don't know. But I'm not a dick. I'm not a dick. I might be a geek, but I'm not a dick. These geeks become dicks. And that's, how else can you, other than the word dick and stupid, how do you explain somebody who thinks the 2-year or 2.5-year COVID restrictions where 1 million people died was a bigger infringement on civil liberties than slavery, segregation, black codes, etc.? Like how, or what we did to Native Americans. But Pete, that's the key point there. We know he's very sympathetic to what we did to Native Americans. He has said that over and over again. How can what we did during COVID be worse than what we've done to Native Americans? Like, leaving aside slavery, like just throw slavery out. When a Supreme Court justice says shit like that, it matters. It matters to 15-year-olds or 18-year-olds who aren't sure if they're liberal or conservative or aren't sure how they feel about things. Then they hear a Supreme Court justice say, yeah, closing your schools was the worst affront to civil liberties in the history of the country. And they think, oh, yeah, I hated being at home. I hated that shit. No, it matters. And it's an ignorant statement. Pete, if I had said to you during our first conversation, if you met somebody who said, yeah, COVID, what we did there was terrible. In fact, it was worse than slavery. What are you going to say?
It's the least intellectual analysis I've ever heard, but also one of my favorite pieces that you've done. Geeks become dicks, ladies and gentlemen. I think I'll just release that part of it. All right, let me ask you one more thing that I want. I haven't seen you.
By the way, I'm willing to die in that grade. When it comes, all I'm talking about now is law schools and the legal community. Geeks become dicks, and the worst kind of dick is a dick who used to be a geek. Go ahead.
How come you haven't been saying anything or analyzing or speculating about the debt limit? If Joe Biden is the president, used the 14th Amendment, which it looks increasingly like he won't, I think.
Right.
The Supreme Court would then be the decider. And I think the analysis that I like the best is that it would then be up to them to decide what happens with the world economy. So if they say that Biden was wrong, can't do that, then they would be blamed for destroying the world economy. Potentially, they would be blamed, and therefore they might not do it. I don't know. Have you thought at all about what would happen if the Supreme Court gets this, if it happened?
Right. So I do a couple things first. I mean, related, but just preliminary. Remember that in 1936, Franklin
lean back into your computer. I can hear you.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1930. I love when Pete tells me what to do. No, I do. I love it. I get better. I do better because of it. In 1936, Franklin Delano Roosevelt went on the biggest media of the day.
I mean, what are you, Rachel Maddow right now? I just wanted to ask you about the debt limit thing. You're going all the way back to 1936, but go ahead.
I am. FDR went on radio and said the Supreme Court's destroying the economy. We have to save the Constitution from the court and the country from the court. And whatever, however you think today is in terms of bad, 1935 was pretty terrible. Depression, all that stuff. So the court was destroying the economy until Roosevelt went on the radio and said, stop invalidating my New Deal programs. You people are aged and infirm men, and we need to save the country from you. So this wouldn't be the first time. If Biden were to do something the court were to reverse, leaving the world economy in peril, it wouldn't be the first time the Supreme Court has destroyed at least the nation's economy during the Great Depression, or helped destroy it. The personal reason I have not been blogging about this or podcasting about it is because, although it's a huge issue, Pete, I don't deny that. First of all, Mike Dorff, who you've had on your show, my co-blogger, he and his friend Neil Buchanan, who also blogs on Dorff and Law, have written, I think, 4 major articles on this and dozens of blog posts. They've been quoted in the Washington Post. They are running with this. People should listen to them. They know what they're talking about. And I have not taken the time to research this issue in the way that would make me comfortable talking about it publicly. I will say that I've read Mike's work on it and Neil's work on it. Their position is Joe Biden has to do something that's illegal. He has no choice. If the Republicans keep blackmailing him, he has to either not spend, he has to either use other money to pay the debt and destroy, our government, basically, or do some other things. And their bottom line is he should pick the least unconstitutional option because all the options are unconstitutional. I don't know enough about it to comment on that, but I strongly recommend Dorf on Law. There have been like 10 essays in the last 3 weeks on the debt crisis. I have chosen to stay out of that debate.
Why?
It would take me too long to get up to speed.
Oh, okay, fair enough. But we appreciate when you tell us.
And as you know, and I hope your audience knows, I will not on your show express strong law professor opinions on things I haven't studied.
I appreciate that. We appreciate that.
I'll express opinions on Billy Joel and Earl Monroe and the Knicks and other movies, but I will not express opinions on law that I don't consider.
Is there anything else that we needed to talk about today?
Next week, can I plug something? I never do this.
Please plug.
I hope people know I don't plug stuff.
Plug it.
I turn 65 next year. I mean, next week. Sorry.
Wow, really?
The senility is kicking in.
Next week?
June 1st of next week, I turn 65. This is destroying me, which is a serious conversation we should have on some other show. The not destroying me part of this is next week on Dorf on Law. At some point, there'll be a blog post, the 65 reasons I hate the Supreme Court of the United States.
Oh, I love it. Can't wait.
And people might say 65. That's a lot of reasons. I could have given 100, but I guess.
I love it. I'm looking forward to that. And happy early birthday. We'll all come together for you, my friend.
It's tragic. It's terrible. It's awful.
Why is it? What is it like? What is
No birthday has ever affected me before.
Oh, really?
Not 60, not 50, not 40. Nope.
What's this one then?
Okay, you want to tease our serious conversation?
Sure.
For the first time in my life, 65 years of living, next Thursday, I feel like I'm looking at the other side.
What is that? What does that mean, and why now?
What it means is I feel like, so I have a new motto in life. I think I've mentioned this to you on your show before. I have after my dad passed, my best friend's wife passed, my Dorf's wife passed.
Yeah.
A bunch of other terrible things happened. My motto is no more waiting. No more waiting. Well, if I want to do something that I can do within family and work confines, I go and do it. No more waiting. So I go, I just do it. Visiting friends, whatever it is. I've had too many losses. But what it really means is the end is now closer than the beginning by a lot. And that's never hit me before. Never. And,
the end is closer, but that's the case every year.
I've never felt it. I've never felt it before. This is the first. I feel like maybe it's because I am seriously thinking about retiring in the next 1 to 3 years. Something I never thought I would do this young. And I'm thinking about a way to live my life post 68 or 69 in a way that is delightful. Kai, my youngest, goes to college in 4 years. And, there's just a lot of change. We're renovating the house. We're moving out June 3rd. But mostly, I don't know why, Pete. I can't tell you. There's no logic in this. But 65, that feels wrong. It just feels really wrong.
Well,
I guess my dad passing just a few months ago is a part of it.
It what?
Is a part of this.
Yeah. That's a little.
Sorry, you can edit that whole part out if you.
All right, no, I don't want to. That was a human moment, and I think I want to let people respond to you on that.
I would love to hear it because I put on Twitter yesterday. What should I do when I turn 65?
Oh, I didn't
retire.
See that.
Yeah, I said A, retire. B, write a blog post, 65 reasons I hate the Supreme Court. Or C, I forget what C was. I'm choosing B in the short term.
All right, well, we'll leave it there then. And everybody wish him happy birthday and send him all the love.
It's next week.
Okay, bud. Thank you very much.
Take care, my friend.
All right, there he goes, Eric Segall out of eSpin Segall. Go follow him on Twitter. Go check him out on TikTok as well. He's become very popular over there. Listen to his podcast, Supreme Myths. And, of course, go right now, say hi to @Molly Wood on Twitter and subscribe to her podcast, Everybody in the Pool. Hopefully I'll have a conversation with Christian and Ophira tomorrow, as I have the past few Saturdays. People really like that. If you haven't listened to my first episode of my new series, Can You Talk Real Quick, with Christine Romans. We talked debt ceiling yesterday. A lot of great feedback on that. Thank you for it. And thank you for listening this week. It's been a great week, and I'm very excited about what's happening next week. I'm starting to plan a lot more ahead. I think that's going to make a big difference. I'm energized, folks. I'm fired up, and I'm ready to do this, make this bigger and better and grow it, and very enthusiastic right now. You can't tell. Have an awesome weekend if I don't talk to you, but I probably will talk to you. And here's a great quote from Bill McKibben, speaking of climate. Climate change is the single biggest thing that humans have ever done on this planet. The one thing that needs to be bigger is our movement to stop it. Well, we're trying. We're trying, Bill. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of a stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in. With other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? Cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.